I've always been super smart, love learning, but it's through like a lot of bad things that led me to being a business owner. And so I always tell people some of the biggest blessings come through the biggest curses. My boss at the time had like come to me and questioned me on how many like cold calls I had made in a day. The fact that I challenged her just a little bit, she was just like, "You're fired." Like over. And I was like the top salesman in our region. Like I had won every award possible. And then for her just to fire me like that, I was just told myself I would never ever put myself in that position again. Whatever your job may be, you do your job better than anyone else around you, it will stand out and it will lead from one opportunity to the next to the next. You have to remember that you're in control instead of wrapping your whole life around everyone else and kids and business. I think you have to put your wants and needs first and build everything else around that.
If your daughter listens to this episode 20 years from now, what's one thing you hope she understands? Today, I'm sitting down with Stephanie. She's a mom, an entrepreneur, and someone who somehow manages both a Clean Eatz Cafe and an insurance agency, which might sound like an unusual combination until you hear the story behind it. I just want to give a warm welcome to Stephanie. She's in Pueblo, Colorado. But Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I was just kind of prepping like right before we started to hit record, and I was like, the first question I always love is like who you were growing up and what are there signs that you're going to be sitting in this office today managing insurance and a food chain.
I guess if you ask my mom, she would probably say there were signs. I guess so. I grew up with a single mother, and she probably has more work ethic than I do, which I can't say that about a lot of people. She's definitely who I aspire to be. She's resilient as can be, and she has faced, more adversity than I can even imagine facing. And as I've gotten older and now that I'm a mom, I look back and there were so many things that I may not have appreciated then that I appreciate now. So, I've always been super smart, love learning, but it was through like a lot of bad things that kind of led me to being a business owner. And so I always, tell people some of the biggest blessings come through like the biggest curses. And so we can kind of talk through all that, but I wouldn't say there was always clear signs, but looking back, I can see that there were more than I give credit to.
All right. So you have me intrigued with this. What was the curses that turned into blessings?
Well, so I was the oldest child with two younger brothers. My brother, who's 5 years younger than me, was born like 3.5 months premature. So he was like 2.5 pounds when he was born, multiple surgeries. So like the first year we spent in the hospital, like that was just kind of what our life looked like. But thankfully he pulled through and is thriving now. And then I had another little brother who passed away from SIDS when he was 3 months old. And so I would have been 8 when that happened. And so as much as my mom was strong and resilient, she was very much checked out a little bit, like emotionally, which, at the time I struggled with sometimes, but looking back, I'm like, she handled that very well, So I think with me, I was the oldest and I just never wanted to be a burden for her or create problems because she always had so much going on. So I was always going to be the straight A student. I always loved helping in the house, and I just kind of took on that like mother role for my little brother. And so, but I never lacked love. That was like one thing, like she was very strong, but she just wasn't always good at showing it, if that makes sense. And so I think that pushed me to always do good in school and I never wanted to be a problem. So I picked up perfectionism, which probably wasn't the best trait, but it does help in some aspects. But when she ever talks about me, she's like, I always knew you would do amazing things, but I just didn't know what. So
I love that. So we have kind of a similar story with that because I was the oldest of 3 girls also. And my youngest sister was sick as soon as she was born, as soon as they came home. And that is like, I understand the responsibility that gets, and it's kind of, I feel like, and maybe I'm over speaking on this, but it's almost like your childhood got a little bit robbed from you.
Absolutely. And, as you get older, you think those things as a child are going to like haunt you forever. I mean, childhood is very important, but like now as an adult, I can look back and I don't hold that like grudge or I understand it a lot better. But it does. I mean, you have to grow up incredibly fast, and you take the back seat, and you're kind of just left with whatever leftover time or energy is spent. But I wouldn't change it, absolutely. But it stings a little.
It does. And again, I understand that so much, but I don't think that I would be the person that I am today if I didn't go through that. Maybe that's why, I know that your leadership is really good. I mean, you own 2 businesses. And so the work ethic is there because I think you did pull and pick up the slack. And we were just talking, you're sitting in an office next to Clean Eatz so that you can empower your team to make the right decisions without you being in the office. And I think that says a lot about, like you show all these signs you had to think fast on your feet, being that young of an age to do all that. So I did not know about that about you. So that's pretty cool. So tell me how you get out of the house. Are you going to college? Tell me how you had the insurance agency before Clean Eatz?
Yeah. So growing up being in hospitals a lot with my brother, like I always thought I was going to be a nurse. That was just, like the nurses were such a saving grace to our family and like really brought comfort to us in a hard time. So through high school, I was in something called the Health Academy. When I graduated high school, I had already had like my first 2 years of my nursing. And so then I ended up moving to Arizona and went to ASU for nursing. And I always joke with people, like when they ask, like, how'd you get into like insurance? I'm like, well, I started out as a nursing school dropout. But yeah, so I moved to Arizona and started that. And unfortunately, like 3 months in, I was 20 and got a DUI. And so they are very strict with that stuff. So which again, blessing in disguise. I knew in my heart I didn't necessarily want to be a nurse. Like, going through the schooling, did I enjoy it? Maybe a little, but it just wasn't for me. But I started it, so I wanted to finish it, and I didn't want to disappoint my mom. And so again, the DUI, like, thank God it threw me off the track that I was on, because I probably would have pushed through and probably would have been a nurse and probably would have hated it. So after I got kicked out of nursing school, I was just bartending in Arizona, and it was probably about a year. I was just not lost, but I was like, I'm going to take this time. I'm just going to work hard. I ended up buying my first house when I was 20 just by working hard. And one of my regulars at the bar was like, have you ever thought about getting your real estate license? I was like, no, not really. I haven't really thought about much at this point. And so, that's one of the things I always tell people is you never know who's watching. Whatever your job may be, whether you're working at McDonald's or if you do your job better than anyone else around you, it will stand out and it will lead from one opportunity to the next to the next. And so I ended up getting my real estate license in Arizona and then moved back and got my insurance license. And so that would have been 14 years ago now. And so I moved back to my hometown. My mom had a little bit of a health scare, and being that far away, I was like, oh God, so I came back and I was 23 at the time. And then I worked for State Farm for about a year and I got fired. And so after being fired, I was just, and that was actually to go back to kind of childhood. That was one thing about my mom. Like, she had the best work ethic. Like, she would work harder than anybody. She would do the job of 2 or 3 people, but it was like she would work for somebody for a few years and then either she was too qualified or they didn't want to give her the pay raise. And so she would either, quit or something would happen. And so I do remember as a kid, thinking back, I never want to have a job that can be taken away from me, because I watched her go through that. And so as soon as that was the only job I had ever been fired from, and I was like, you know what, I will never work for anybody again after that. And so there came Main Street Insurance.
Okay, I got to ask, what got you fired? Can you say?
It was actually something very petty. And that's I'm sure when you have crazy work ethic and you do the right thing all the time and someone questions you, it's like when someone's accusing you of lying and you're not lying. It's just that thing that just sets you off. And so my boss at the time had come to me and questioned me on how many cold calls I had made in a day. And it was the same day we had gotten a really bad hailstorm in the area. And so for her to come at me, I'm like, were you not here yesterday? Like there was so much, we were taking claims calls all day. And like the fact that I challenged her just a little bit, she was just like, you're fired. Like over. And I mean, I was like the top salesman or saleswoman, in our region. Like I had won every award possible. And then so for her just to fire me like that, I was just told myself I would never, ever put myself in that position again.
That has to burn even more because it's like such a minor thing. You know, you're like, I was doing my job, hailstorm yesterday. Yeah. You're questioning me if I'm doing my job. Like, of course, you know.
I think it was one of those things that when they don't even give you like the opportunity to like explain, they just like come at you like so accusatory and like you just instantly become defensive. And so in that moment, I was like, this is it. I won't ever answer to someone like that. So it took a few months to kind of figure out exactly what route I wanted to go. And, you know, I was young. I didn't have a bunch of money saved up to start a business. And I knew how to sell insurance, but I did not know how to necessarily run an insurance agency or a business. So there were some hard lessons learned along the way with the IRS and taxes and, you know, how to structure all of that. But again, I wouldn't change the way it transpired at all because I've learned a lot and I've grown and started other businesses. So.
Okay, so let's go to the other businesses. What other businesses have you started?
So I also have the photo booth company, which it's kind of, that's more of like a hobby, I think. I mean, it is a business, but, you know, it's just me. And I do have a few people that help from time to time, but we do the special events, the weddings and graduation parties and stuff like that. So, and then I own a couple residential and commercial real estate, and then Clean Eatz. So.
Still me. Okay. So I gotta ask, how did you go from, it sounds like you were kind of on a, I was gonna say all the businesses are kind of lined up. Maybe not the photo business, but but then how do you get into the food business from all of this? How did they all tie together?
Kind of how the photo booth thing started was not necessarily by accident, but I was actually at a convention out in Miami, you know, just like a business, like entrepreneur convention, and they had a bunch of photo booths, you know, scattered throughout the event. And so me and the colleague that I was with, we took a picture. You know, you put your phone number in to get the picture. Well, then sure enough, I start getting all this marketing from this company that was hosting the event. I'm like, man, what a genius idea. Like, you let people take free pictures, you put your phone number in, and then they start marketing to you. So, you know, we had set up lots of tables, you know, at different events around town for insurance. And of course, I mean, insurance is boring. Nobody likes to talk about insurance. So I was like, this would be a great way to get people to come to our table, to start talking to us. Then we can capture their phone number with the photo booth, and then we can start marketing to them. So that's kind of how it started. And then before you know it, people started asking if we rented it out for holidays and parties. And there was not a single company, a photo booth company in Pueblo where we live. So I was like, sure, let's do it. So it was kind of on accident. But then as far as Clean Eatz, living in Arizona is kind of what sparked it, because I mean, this was 15 years ago now, but living out there, there's so many healthy options because, you know, I've always worked a couple jobs, you know, when I was in college, and I enjoy cooking, but I'm just always so busy that meal prepping was hard. And so when I came back to Pueblo, I was like, man, we really have nothing here. Like at the time, we didn't even have like a Chipotle, which is not anything close to Clean Eatz, but we didn't have any type of like build your own bowl or anything similar. So it was something I wanted to do for over a decade. I didn't think I could start it from scratch because there is so much that goes into, you know, all the recipes. And so once I got financially stable enough with the insurance agency, that's when I started looking into franchising and came across you and Don. So it was just more of like, I sometimes like to call it my passion project. I mean, obviously with any business, you want to make money, but I just really saw a need selfishly for myself, having a company like this in Pueblo, but I mean, also just serving the community and making eating easy and affordable. So that was, yeah, thanks to Arizona. This was kind of where I just wanted to bring something to my hometown.
No, and I love how you called it a passion project, because that's a lot of money to put into something to call it a passion project. But with that being said, our most successful owners, that's what it is. You know, it's if you, I don't want to say you don't like dive into with any business like your P&Ls, and you got to make money. Like obviously we all have to make money to survive, but I feel like it's how you put your priorities in that. Like if you do think that your customers are first and for you, that this is a passion and you treat it like that. Like I do think that the money always comes into your bank account, and I know that's as we grow with Clean Eatz, I know that's not always the smart business thing, but it really does work. If you're focused on those P&Ls and those numbers and all the everything, it just feels like you're missing something.
Yeah. And I think customers and employees can see that. I feel like that's one thing I've prided myself on with both Main Street Insurance and Clean Eatz is I have great teams. And I think, when they can see the passion come out of you, and when they know you're passionate about it and it's not just about making money and numbers, like with the insurance agency, all of those employees, like they came to me because I was just by myself for like the first 3 years, I think, but I was active in the community and active on social media. And so all of the employees that I have like reached out to me that were working at other insurance agencies and like asked to join my team. And then even with Clean Eatz, like a lot of my younger employees are, people that I've known for a long time. It's their children and they know, who I am as a person. And so we've been open now 14 months and I haven't lost a single employee. I'm still rolling with our opening crew. So, and I think that goes, obviously they all work to make money and, to survive, but I think they could maybe go work somewhere else and make a little bit more. But when you create that like team and they can see your passion, I think they give you a different.
I agree with all of that. All right. So we didn't forget, but I want to kind of backtrack because your most important job of the world is mom. So when did she come into the picture?
So she's 6.5, even though she thinks she's 16. Full transparency, she wasn't planned. I wasn't married. But, me and her dad get along great and we're great co-parents. And yeah, it was kind of a surprise, but I was very excited and even more excited to know that it was going to be a little girl, just because if you've got girls, you understand like that bond is just something that can nothing compares to that. And so, of course, she's my biggest why and probably works harder than most of the people. And she loves, like she sees my work ethic and she takes pride in any of my customers at either business. Like anytime they come, they're like, "Where's Ellie?" So, she's my pride and joy. Absolutely.
All right. So I have to ask, you have all these businesses, you're a mom. Tell me how you do it all.
Some days it's graceful, some days it's not so graceful, but I think, that's what success is creating things that allows you to bring your children, into, she has a little play corner back here where she, there's days she has to come and she understands. And I think just being radically transparent with her, like, this is why mom works, is so we can do these things. And, I always tell that there's no work-life balance. It's just more of like a work-life harmony. There's busy seasons where things are a little messy and you don't get to spend as much time together. And then there's slower seasons where you get to, spend a lot more time. And so I think, kids are smart. She's only 6 and she understands that, I tell her about my day. I tell her what I have going on. Like she understands the concept of money and, maybe too much, but I think just, and making them feel like a part of it. Like I don't, I feel like a lot of people, when they go to work, that's it, that's all their kids know, but she knows exactly what I'm doing when I go and she sees the importance behind it. So I sleep great and we get a lot done in a short amount of time, but some days are easier than others for sure.
What about time for you? I've been finding, as things drop off my plate and stuff, like, do you think that you've lost yourself in any part of this? Like, I know that the Stephanie that, the 16-year-old Stephanie, the 20-year-old Stephanie, and the new Stephanie, that everything you build upon those, right? But sometimes I just, I wake up and I'm just like, man, I missed this, or I don't know what's next. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or do you have the what next? Because you're super young and like, is there something else?
Yeah. There's always the what's next. I think when you have that, entrepreneur mind, like, I think that's what's hard for me is especially living in Pueblo, we're very behind the curve in a lot of ways, which for, people that have the drive and determination to open businesses, it's great because there's not a lot of competition. But the bad thing is like you travel and you see all these other, things that you want to bring to the community. So there's always the what's next. I don't think I've ever lost myself. I mean, the one thing I've always probably over the last year, because for the first 5 years, I was only working out at home and I was kind of getting burned out on that. But the last year I started, actually going back to a gym and prioritizing, that hour a day for me, because a lot of it's just for your mental health too. It's sure, do you want to go to the gym to feel better? But just that mental clarity piece has been so important for me. But I have noticed lately, I'm just not a lot of fun. Even when I go to things or I'm around a lot of other people, I've struggled. You always just have that, I should be doing this or I could be doing something productive. I think I've had a hard time just letting go and being fun. So I think I've lost that spark a little bit over the last few years, is just because I feel like my time could just be spent doing something. And it's not even really work when you enjoy it. It's I would genuinely would rather be here doing something than being at a barbecue, drinking beers, talking to people that I really don't care to be talking to, kind of thing. So I think that's probably the thing I struggle with the most as of recently. It's just the empty conversations. You can only just smile and nod, So I think finding that circle has been, I'm kind of at that weird age where just kind of reinventing your friends and finding people that you enjoy surrounding yourself with.
No, I think that's just the different seasons. And that's why I kind of asked, because that is seasons and people think that you're going to stay forever and the friends are going to stay forever. And that's just not how it is. But I love how what you just said was that you built the businesses around your passions, right? And they don't feel like jobs. And I think some people don't realize that. And I think I get asked that a lot too, what do you do for fun? I'm I go to work. Mm-hmm. I like what I've created, and I was even talking to somebody a little bit, or it was actually today, they were talking about, with me and Dawn. And I was what's great is that I still have freedom from a marriage, because I work with him from 8 to 4 every day. We see each other. Yes, we still work on our relationship. But when we come home, we get our freedom to where I don't have to walk home to, a husband that's wanting my time so much. But I think you create the life that you want. And you kind of add those elements into the things that, and it's natural, I feel that it's not forced. And so I just was kind of evaluating that today. I was man, I'm really lucky because I get to come home and kind of do what I want to do. If I want to go to the gym and work out, if I want to just crash, he's not up my ass to, that whole relationship struggle with that. And then we reconnect back at 7:00 tonight, and do our things. But go back to what's a hill that you are willing to die on with? Is there something you're you know what? I don't care. I am not budget on this.
I would say I think if you ask my few closest friends, they're always Stephanie's too nice. That's the one thing people will always say, which can be a downfall, 100%. But I think with employees, and maybe call it too nice, I don't know. But I try to be as forgiving as possible. I mean, life happens, and that's one thing even with teams that I always tell people, you got to like the people you work with too. I think I did before the restaurant opened 200 interviews, and I knew I only needed 15, but I mean, there was a lot of people that were well qualified and probably would have been better fit for the job than some of the people I have, but it's you have to like them too. I'm if I'm going to be spending all this time with you, and not only do I need to like them, the people that I knew that I had, I needed to also hire people that they would get along with. I think you have to kind of take that all into consideration, and because you spend more time with the people you work with than you do at home. And so, but I'm never going to be the boss that writes people up for being a little bit late or for I mean, obviously within reason, but I think just life happens, and I mean, everything's figure outable. I mean, unless the whole staff calls off, but it's if somebody's late or somebody, I think just giving people grace. I feel we live in a world that's just especially as a leader, it's you're expected to be just like in command all the time and just the hard ass. And I'm like, I'm never going to be that person. Like I just don't really let a lot. There's probably things that should bother me that don't. I just don't really let things get me like too worked up. 'Cause it's like, for what? Like, it just doesn't do anybody any good to get mad. So it's like, if you see me mad, it's not good because it takes a lot to get me to that point.
Would that be someone stealing an Amazon package off your doorstep?
Oh, that's, yes. A thief and a liar, those two things. I'm like, always be honest with me. That's like my one thing. I'm like, I don't care what it is. Like, do not lie and do not steal. Like, so, but yes, that will get me fired up.
Yeah, it was funny because we went in the office that day, and I'm going to have you explain it in just a minute. But John's like, "Have you seen Stephanie's Instagram story?" And I was like, "No." And it was basically someone stole package right off your Clean Eatz doorstep, and you chased them down the street and tackled them.
Yeah, I mean, hindsight, it probably wasn't the best idea, but so we're right in like the heart of downtown, so on 12th or on Union and C Street. So. Which the fact that the Amazon driver left, I mean, we are on the corner. Like to walk past our door, you literally have to step over the packages. And so I had a friend that had been driving by and she's like, "Hey, just so you know, there's packages on your doorstep." I'm like, "Well, can you grab them?" And she's like, "Oh, I already left." I'm like, so I pulled up the cameras and I'm dropping my daughter off at school. I'm watching and like, here comes a guy on a bicycle and there's a bench right by our door. So he sits on the bench. I'm like, this guy, I already know he's going to take them. Like I could just see it in his eyes. And they're big packages. I will give him kudos for like being able to hold those and then ride a bicycle. But I was like maybe 4 or 5 blocks away and I'm watching him on the camera. I'm like, oh, he picks them up and he rides away. So I come hauling in my truck down the street and I parked and ran after him and tackled him and got my boxes back. So I said a lot of words I didn't even know were in my vocabulary that day. But yeah, like we've only had 2 other problems with people coming in and, just opening the freezers and trying to take meals, which I've tackled them also. But, we also had a guy come in and ask for a meal. I'm like, if you are hungry, you come in, like I will feed you, but do not come in here and steal. That's like the one thing, especially when you do give to the community, you give back and like, but the stealing part does not ever sit well with me.
For you to run on the street and tackle this guy with his Amazon on a bike, like, what do you think? Can you like define what came over you? Was that just like a response or because it didn't seem like you thought about it?
No, and probably shouldn't say this out loud, but my daughter was in the car too. And so, I just parked the truck, which again, I know this neighborhood. I know, like I pulled over, put it in a safe spot. And also just the confidence, like I knew I was going to catch this guy. So, I mean, again, hindsight, it probably could have gone a few different ways but I think too, just if he would have stole those packages and got away with it, like he would have come back. That's how people are. So it was more of just like a principle thing. Like, but then like, even when I got back to the truck, my daughter was like, "Mommy, did you get your packages back?" I was like, "Hell yes, I did." And she was so proud. I was like, "Thank God." But yeah, I think rage for sure. Just again, like there's nothing worse than a thief, man. That's
the worst.
Mm-hmm. Especially like when you do work so hard for everything. I'm like, again, like if you need something, come ask me and I will help, but don't just take it off my doorstep. That's
owning all the businesses that you do. What do you think is like one rule about success that you've completely stopped believing?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think a lot of times when people talk about success, it's like what the money in their bank account or the things they've purchased or like the trips they've got to take. But I think for me, like providing opportunities for other people has like been like an amazing experience, like, doing payroll every week and like being able to provide opportunities. Obviously all of your employees work for it, but, especially like with the insurance agency, I've got 4 girls that work underneath me and they've been with me for, several years now. But, when they first came to me, like many of them were still living at home or, they were single. Now they're married with kids and like they've purchased their first home and purchased cars and like gone on trips. So I think I've almost enjoyed watching their success, not more than mine, but as much as mine. And so I think a lot of times people define success just for them. And for me, it's also like measured with the opportunities you provide to other people as well.
I love that. All right. I got some rapid fires for you before I ask you my final question.
Okay.
Biggest business pet peeve, which you probably know.
Oh, I hate the word boss. Even when people call me like, oh, this is my boss, I'm like, oh God, don't say that. Like, it's so, yeah, I think even, I don't know, talking about myself as like a business owner, I don't know. I'm very humble, and oftentimes when people like brag about me, it makes me uncomfortable, or I just, I guess just the ego. I don't like the the ego that often comes along with business owners. And
so what do you want to be called? What feels good?
I guess leader, but even then, like I don't really hold myself above like any of I mean, like with the agency, like I'm just like, okay, like I'm the agency owner, I guess, but even with, I don't know, just by my name, I guess, I don't really prefer any fancy title. Like,
no, I get it. I totally understand. I relate to that. One app you can't live without.
I mean, I love Facebook and Instagram. I mean, I feel like to me, social media is great if you use it for what it was intended to. So, yeah, as embarrassing as that is.
One habit everyone should start tomorrow.
I think being consistent, which I know it sounds cliche, but I mean, you have to show up every single day, no matter. And that was one thing my mom always like instilled in me is sad, mad, angry, sick. Like you just have to show up every single day. No exceptions.
Best advice you ever received?
Ooh, best advice. One thing that always stuck with me, especially with parenting, like people always try to give you the parenting advice, when you're pregnant, but I think it kind of applies to like other areas of life. Was like someone told me when I had Ellie, like she's coming into your life, like obviously there's some things that you have to change within reason, but I feel like there's so many parents that, their whole life revolves around nap time or feeding. Like, you bring them in and they, they're part of your life. And I think that kind of also applies with business. Like, I mean, it is your life. And if you do, especially being an entrepreneur, like you can build those businesses around your life. And, you have to remember that you're in control. And I think instead of wrapping your whole life around everyone else and kids and business, I think you have to put your wants and needs first and kind of build everything else around that.
Love that. What's one thing you're saying no to this year?
I've been better. Boundaries have been a problem for me, and saying I've always been a yes person. Like I like to overcommit and, say yes to events and birthday parties and things like I genuinely don't want to go to. So I have been much better about not attending things that I don't want to attend, that I hate to say don't serve me because that sounds like selfish, but I mean, there's just some things and feeling like you don't owe an explanation. Like it's okay to say no and not explain or come up with an excuse or come up with a why. Like, no, I just don't want to. And so it's still a work in progress, but I have come a long way over the last probably 6 months with just saying, no, I won't be there.
Love it. If your daughter listens to this episode 20 years from now, what's one thing you hope she understands and why you chose this life? I
mean, obviously I always want to make her proud. I hope that she understands like she is my absolute pride and joy in everything I do, is not just for her, but for me too. I saw my mom lose so many things growing up and like worked hard and lost things that were out of her control. And so that's a lot of my motivation is creating things not only for myself, but things I can pass down to her that not anybody can ever take from her. And so I hope she sees that all the long days and long nights is not only for me, but for her as well and, her future. So
I love that. Well, it's been such great. I've learned so much about you today that I did not know from, just being fired,
yeah.
And all these, and I love how you started the whole podcast out. Like you're like, I took every misturn that there was and I created an opportunity. And I think you told that so well. And whoever's out there listening thinks, that what they're going through right now is the worst thing in their life that they could be going through, like, it's meant for a reason and you're meant for something else. And maybe you didn't pay attention to the signs to begin with, like starting nursing school, and you were supposed to do this other thing and you didn't listen. So universe, it just gives you hard turns to take. So
yeah. And I appreciate that. And I think too, like, just doing what feels right. I mean, I think sometimes people overthink so many things, whether it's relationships or business or, I mean, even when I, had done the franchisee inquiry form with Clean Eatz, like, sometimes, like, you just feel it. I had looked into a few other franchises and their websites, and, like, something with Clean Eatz felt right. And then, coming out to Discovery Day, I can't even remember what exactly it was that you and Don had said, but I remember you guys, like, speaking it was before you guys moved into the new building.
Old building.
But you kind of, like, just went up there and just kind of did your little spiel to everyone. And, like, I just kind of knew in that moment, I'm like, these are my people. Like, I can resonate with them. And I probably could have picked apart the SDD and done so many things different, but I'm like, I knew it, and I just leaned into that. And I think that's important, is just trusting your gut.
I know. I always laugh because, like, we invited you guys to a warehouse that was dungy and all of this. And I was like, the people who bought Clean Eatz when they had to, walk through these doors, like, they're believers, now they get the bougie office or they don't see all those hard knocks, before. So I was like, yeah.
But I think that's important. I mean, I love your guys' story and, like, where you started and, the sleeping in the back of, your first cafe, because was about 3 months where I had to sleep in an extra spare office, like, at my insurance agency. And so just kind of, like, hearing you guys, I'm like, all right, like, there's some things that are built in those moments that can't be taught. And so yeah, I appreciate. It's been cool I've only been apart for, I guess, call it 2 years now. Just so to even just see the growth that you guys have accomplished over this short amount of time, it's been awesome.
Well, we cannot do it without owners and passionate individuals like you. I always said, I don't know if I said it that day, but it's like, you just can't do, I know it's so cliche, but you can't do epic shit with basic people. You have to have the culture, and you have to have the same mindset, or no business, I feel like, is ever going to survive.
No. And I think just trusting people. I mean, I'm sure there's been mistakes everyone's made along the way, but I feel like when you find those people that are doing the right thing, or at least trying to, and, like, there's going to be a lot of bumps along the way. And I think, I think just being radically transparent with people, whether it's your employees or franchise owners, like, it's not always going to be a smooth path, but when you find those people that, you're willing to go through it all, it makes it much easier to know that you all have a common goal. And it's going to get ugly before it gets better sometimes. And that's just part of life.
I'm going to leave it right there. It gets ugly before it gets better sometimes.
Awesome.